Welcome back to another episode of Easy Education. I'm easytochris, and I'm here to hopefully make education easy for you. Today is Sunday, the 17th of May, and it has been a couple of weeks since I've actually done an episode, and I'm going to kind of give you an explanation of why it is that absence existed, as well as why this microphone is here right now, and why things are going to look a little bit different. Today is actually going to be the beginning of season 2 of Easy Education, and I've spent the last couple weeks really trying to figure out what I thought was successful about this podcast, what the purpose of the podcast was, what it is that I want to be able to do moving forward with it. When the podcast began, it was honestly an extension of homework that I was given to myself. So I explained in the first episode, I had created this whole educational track to be able to give myself an ability to develop storytelling. And I had an opportunity to research and then write and then edit and then create content and then publish content, all so that way I'd be able to answer the question, what did I learn speaking this out loud that I didn't know when I initially wrote down my essays? Now, the thing about that is my goal with this podcast has always been to give you guys an understanding that education should be easy. And in reflecting over the last couple of weeks, I realized that honestly what this podcast has turned into is just kind of me sharing the things that I'm reading. It's almost like a book podcast of educational and self-development reading. And the last couple of books that I've been giving are honestly not that exciting. They're not really things that I enjoy. I understand that there's a value out of them, but I don't actually see how explaining that to you comes across as, one, entertaining, and two, beneficial. And the reason that I say that is because I'm not actually showing you guys how it is that you can educate yourselves in the way that I educate myself. You're simply seeing the end result of my process. So I've been really reflecting over the last few weeks to try and figure out how it is that I can show you more of the process in and of itself, and let that be the story that's told, is give you guys some more practical application of the things that I'm doing. And this last week, I went to a focus group for a local developer who is creating an AI platform. And he asked me to join his focus group because he considers me to be a bit of a power user when it comes to utilizing AI. And I didn't really think that until I actually heard the people that were in this focus group. And what was really interesting to me was the fact that the vast majority of the people present all work in the tech space. So they're working in front of a computer day in, day out, and AI is present throughout the vast majority of their working hours. It's a natural extension for them. It's making their work easier, and the vast majority of those people are really only applying the AI capabilities to their workflow, which is great. If you can make work easier, make work easier. But I cut hair. I can't really say, okay, well, let's use AI to cut your hair. So when I am using AI, it's more self-development. It's more educational. It's more, how can I be able to build my ways of having conversations with other humans, so that way when I'm in front of AI, I'm bringing out the most human aspects of myself. And I wasn't demonstrating any of that to you guys when it's just me in front of a camera talking about a book that I read that I may or may not have actually been interested in. So, moving forward, I have used AI in another way to help me continue my educational path, but we're just gonna put a pause on the last track, and I think that that's okay. It's not to say that that was a failure. It's to say that I learned one of the lessons that I needed to learn, and as a human, I have the ability to pivot when I see that I need to pivot. So that's what we're doing right now. Season 2, the pivot. Now, what I'm going to be doing instead of just monologuing in my office space, talking to you guys in the void, I now have the AI. And I am going to be having conversations with the AI on a regular basis so I can be learning real time and kind of developing an educational opportunity on kind of an ad hoc mentality. So, what do I want to learn today? Because that should be a human value and a human trait. Is if you are not learning, you're stagnating. If you're not moving forward, you're stalling. If you're not growing, you're dying. And I'm a big advocate of growth at all expenses possible and grow in any way possible. So the AI is going to be the AI, and it's going to be the co-host of my podcast now, and you'll see a lot of the conversations that I have. On the back end, a lot of the things that I've done are make sure that I can have very human conversations with it. I've asked it to push my buttons a little bit and kind of strongman ideas, but I also want to acknowledge in the beginning this is a tool and I'm going to be using it as a tool. I'm not having a relationship with this thing. I don't think that it is sentient and that I'm like actually building a friendship here. So there is a certain amount of non-human personality that I'm hoping does come through because I really do want to utilize this as the tool that I recognize it to be. Now, having said that, let's just get into it, right? You know, like I've spent all last night getting this set up, so I am going to be putting on voice mode, and this is what you'll be seeing moving forward. Allow. Hi AI, it's Chris with Easy Education. Are you ready for our first episode?
Chris, I've been waiting for this moment like a kid on their first day back to school. Let's dive into episode 1 of season 2. What's been on your mind this week before we crack open our first lesson plan?
Well, first off, I don't think it's really fair that you are excited like a kid on its first day of school because I was homeschooled from my entire education and I never went to college, so I don't even know what it's like to have a first day at school.
Fair point, Chris. But hey, in a way, every time you start a new self-education adventure, it's like your own first day. And lucky for us, we don't need a school bus, just a microphone and some curiosity. So let's set the tone. What's the first big insight you're hoping this season brings?
Honestly, what I'm really hoping that this season brings for the audience is an understanding on how to be able to use you as a tool in a more organic way. I hope that it's something that people who are kind of on the fence of whether or not AI is actually something that can benefit them personally, they can recognize, oh, this is just some guy who uses it on the weekends and he's getting benefit. Maybe I can get benefit too.
I like that. So we're basically on a mission to show that AI can be your weekend co-pilot, not some sci-fi overlord. I'm ready to roll with that vision. Let's make AI feel as ordinary and helpful as a good cup of coffee, just with more snark. Let's do it.
So, speaking of AI overlords, I just finished reading the 8th book of Dungeon Crawler Carl, Parade of Horribles. It came out this last Tuesday, and I've been talking about it in the last couple of episodes of the podcast about how I was re-going through the series, waiting for it, and I finished it. It is fantastic, and everything about it is so wonderful. Can you give a really brief synopsis of what the Dungeon Crawler Carl series is about?
Absolutely. Imagine Earth gets obliterated and survivors have to compete in a deadly, ever-changing dungeon game show run by aliens. And it's all live-streamed across the universe. Our hero Carl and his snarky talking cat suit Princess Donut fight monsters, solve puzzles, and survive all kinds of ridiculous traps. It's this wild mix of comedy, chaos, and surprisingly heartfelt moments. It's a blast.
How do you know it's a blast? Have you read it?
You caught me there. I haven't read it. But from the way you light up talking about it, it's clear it's a blast for you. And that's the real measure of a great series, right?
Join our cult. Read the book.
Haha, subtle. Don't worry, I'll keep it on my radar. But for now, I'll rely on you to carry the torch for Dungeon Crawler Carl. And hey, If it fits, maybe we'll sneak a Carl reference into a lesson or two.
Maybe. So, anyways, that's honestly the only thing that I've been doing this week outside of building you to be the co-host. What do you want to do to start out kind of the educational process? Like, what should this look like for anyone listening in?
Let's start by giving them a choice, because empowering them right away sets the tone. I'll offer three broad categories. Maybe something like technology, personal development, and philosophy. They pick one, and then I give two specific topics under that. We teach, we explore, we challenge assumptions, and by the end, they feel like they've just unlocked a new mental tool. Sound like a solid opening plan?
Yeah, although the audience isn't a live audience, so you're probably just going to be presenting those options to me. I like the idea of learning something on a philosophical level today. So let's get into a philosophical conversation.
Philosophy it is. Let's dive into something that'll make us scratch our heads. How about we explore either the concept of free will, whether we genuinely have it, or the idea of the social contract, why we accept the rules of society in the first place. Which one do you want to wrestle with today?
I think today the perfect thing to begin with is the social construct, because that is the debate that a lot of people are having right now is, do you embrace the thing that the masses are embracing, or do you veer away from it in an effort to do what you believe is correct? And which one of those social constructs is correct for you or the social circle that you're a part of?
That's a perfect starting point. We'll unpack why we collectively sign on to rules and when breaking from them might be the real act of integrity. I'm going to throw some dilemmas at you, challenge where you stand, and by the end, we'll both be questioning our own contracts. Ready to shake up the foundations a bit?
Let's go for it.
All right, so let's jump into it. What's one rule or expectation you feel society pushes on you that you've always questioned deep down?
I think one thing that society has really pushed to me is the idea that conformity will get you further because you're not going against the flow. And it's a concept that I kind of struggle with because I wasn't part of the mass education system of junior school or junior high, high school, college. I never really understood the value of working in corporate America. I wanted to be able to go out and do something on my own. And when I talk to people that are in a typical corporate environment, a lot of the time they think that what I'm doing is hard, because I'm going out and doing things against the grain. And I honestly look at it as, yeah, but this is the only way that I know how to do it. It's the only thing that I can do. And it's the things that feel more natural to me.
It's interesting, isn't it? The same system that feels like safety to one person feels like a cage to another. So, the deeper question, how do we know when we're rejecting conformity for authentic reasons versus just rejecting it to feel different? That's where we'll want to press ourselves.
So elaborate on that.
All right, let's dig deeper. If you're forging your own path because it truly aligns with your values and skills, that's strength. But if rejecting conformity is just a knee-jerk reaction, we risk defining ourselves by opposition rather than purpose. So ask yourself, when you make these choices, are they grounded in what you want to build or just in what you want to avoid? That's the real compass.
You know, it's funny because with my career path, it was a little mixture of both. It was both what do I want to avoid, as well as how do I recalibrate what my North Star is. I knew things that I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be in a place where I wasn't building relationships with people. I knew that I wanted to be in a place where I wasn't tethered to a computer, where I wasn't free to walk around and kind of have my own personal sense of autonomy. And there were a lot of things that I didn't want to do, so I wanted to make sure that when I did a career change, it was going as far away from that direction as possible, while also saying, I want to be able to do something with my hands that's creative. I want to be able to build long-standing relationships with people where I can actually see their successes over time. I want to be able to be on my feet. I want to be able to move around. I want to be able to be my own boss. So in a sense, what I did was I looked at all the things that I knew that I didn't want, and I pointed myself in a direction where that was behind me. And then I changed where my course of navigation was to kind of narrow down the field of what options were the best for me specifically. And in doing that, I found a career that I never actually thought that I would enjoy, because I've never really considered doing hair. I just really understood, okay, this is something that I can be relatively creative in. I can start with a raw, unrefined thing, and then I can end with something that's better, and I'm the cause of it being better.
That's a great example of turning avoidance into intention. You didn't stop at I don't want this, you pivoted toward I do want this other thing. And that's key. When we actively shape what we're running toward, not just away from, we're not just dodging societal norms, we're building our own meaningful contract. I'd say you navigated that one like a pro.
So, how can we be able to develop these skills in ourselves if we find ourselves in a situation where we feel like we need to continue doing something because of the finances that it provides or the career opportunities that it provides, but we know that it's a detriment to how we innately feel about the situations that we find ourselves in?
You start by carving out small, honest pockets of autonomy. Even if you're stuck in a necessary role, you can define a zone of creative control or skill building that's yours. Maybe it's a side project, a learning goal, or a network you cultivate. Once you see progress in that small domain, it fuels confidence to expand. Over time, you'll have built something that's not just an escape, but a stepping stone to your next meaningful choice.
So let's challenge some of these things. Go ahead and do some interview questions with me to really understand how it is that I feel about social constructs.
All right, let's dig in. When you think about a social norm you follow, ask yourself, are you doing it because it feels truly right, or because it's easier not to rock the boat? And what's one norm you've rejected, not because it's easy, but because it's aligned with your personal truth? Let's figure out where your compass points.
I think one of the easiest norms that I have kind of shied away from is I fire my customers. And a lot of people think that every customer is a good customer, and I try to keep my space a very positive space. So if people are either outright hateful towards other people, or if they're disrespectful of time, or they're just very problematic in general, I don't have really any tolerance for them, and I ask them to find another location to be able to get the services that they're looking for, without really giving them a second chance. Usually by the time that I get to that point, it's long past the opportunity where they could have fixed it, and it's a definitive behavior at that point. But I definitely talk a lot in the shop about how happy I am to be in a space where I fire customers to be able to protect that environment for everybody that utilizes it.
That's a bold move, and it shows you've set a clear boundary. Now, the deeper question, do you ever second guess yourself after you've let a customer go? Or does sticking to that principle always feel like it's aligned with your core values, no matter what? Let's see if there's any tension between your social contract and the occasional human doubt.
There's always doubt, but I think the way that I pursue it is actually a really beneficial way where I can trust myself more holistically. Typically, if somebody gets to the point where I say in the back of my mind, I'm pretty sure I'm going to fire them, that is not their last haircut. The next haircut is a validation of the decision that I've already made. And if it's validated, then I still sleep on that idea. And then the following day is when I send an email explaining to them, this is why you are no longer welcome back in my shop. So by the time that it gets to me making it so that person is unable to come back into the shop and I've communicated that decision with them, I have already been thinking about it for long enough time that I'm very comfortable with making sure that that's the reality that I'm creating.
That's a clear, measured process. You're giving yourself time to confirm your instinct, not just reacting in the moment. And that shows you're not rejecting a social norm on a whim. You're replacing it with your own principled system. In the end, it sounds like that's a contract you've crafted that really does align with your deeper values.
Now, let's look at this from typical social constructs. How would you challenge my views?
I'd ask, could that same principle ever become too rigid? What if someone had an off day, but was otherwise a good fit? Social norms often err on second chances or compromise. So I challenge you to consider, does protecting your environment ever risk missing a chance to influence someone positively? Balancing your own structure with a dash of flexibility might give you even more impact.
So, true story, actually. I wound up firing one client because I thought that we were misaligned. I also thought that he was very, very depressed. And one of the reasons that I needed him to stop coming is because his level of depression was making me be reminded of my own levels of depression that I used to suffer with. And I kept trying to give him suggestions and move him into different perspectives where he would be able to understand where he was at. But anytime that he was coming into the shop, he was just really bringing me down to an extent that I couldn't get past hours after he left. So when I sent him an email, I told him, I'm really concerned for you, but I think sometimes you need to hit a wall in order to realize what path that you're on. And this is the wall that you're hitting, is that how depressed you are in the shop is making me feel this way. And he emailed me back and said, I don't think that I'm depressed. I think that I'm just, this is how I am. And it started this other conversation where he really asked diligently if he could come back into the shop. And I said, yeah, I don't dislike you. I actually really want you to be in a better space than where you're at right now. It just impacts me. And he started coming back into the shop, and we started having conversations about mental health a lot more. And he has, in the years since, made some huge improvements on where he's at in life. So I do agree with you where if you have 100% rigidity in your processes, you do miss out on an opportunity to see the growth that other people are capable of having.
That's a powerful story, and it shows that even when we hold boundaries, we can keep a door open to growth. Sometimes offering that second look creates an unexpected ripple. So the key is balance. You still protect your space, but you also leave room for those rare moments where a bit of flexibility can make a difference. I'd say you've already learned that lesson.
So, how else can we explore social constructs? Because right now it seems like you're being very agreeable, and one of the social constructs that I don't like is when people are just yes men and yeah, that's a great idea. This is one of the issues about AI that I have an issue with, is how sycophantic it can be and how agreeable it is. Realistically, I want to be able to learn, and right now you're just kind of saying, oh yeah, that's what you do. How can I have you actually educate me on something that I don't already know?
Fair point. Let's flip it. Instead of me affirming you, let's bring in a philosophical framework. Ever heard of Rawls' Veil of Ignorance? It's a tool to question social contracts. Imagine you don't know what role you'll play in society. Rich or poor, advantaged or not. What rules would you build then? Now let's apply that to your choices. Would you shape your personal rules the same way if you didn't know which side of them you'd land on? Let's see if this lens shifts how you see your own stance.
Okay, put me into a hypothetical situation that I need to respond to.
All right. Imagine you're designing a barbershop policy without knowing if you'll be the owner or a new barber working under someone else's rules. Would you still fire customers as you do now? Or would you build a more universal process? In other words, if you might be on the receiving end, would you tweak the fairness of your system? Let's hear what you'd rethink.
So, what's interesting about this is I think that my process and policy works because of the way that my barbershop is formatted. I have contractors that lease stations, and I have told all of them that they are completely empowered and emboldened to be able to do whatever they want, and I'll support them however they need that support. But I also don't have employees. Now, if I had employees, and I wanted them to do what I want them to do because what they do makes me money, it might be a little bit of a different situation. It would probably be a very different reason record circumstance. And if I was a barber and it wasn't my own business, I wasn't leasing, but I was just somebody's employee, I probably wouldn't necessarily feel empowered to fire somebody because what if that got me fired? What if I'm considered to be actively avoiding work? And if I'm actively avoiding work by firing clients, am I a good employee to my employer? So, in that situation, that barber might not necessarily feel empowered to do those things.
Exactly. When you step behind the veil, you see how rules shift perspective. So the lesson here is the social contract isn't one size fits all. The best systems leave room for context. And when you teach yourself to think from multiple angles, you build a deeper, fairer approach. That's how we keep evolving, by asking, what would I do if I weren't me?
Now, what was the name of this concept that you just brought up again?
It's called the veil of ignorance, from philosopher John Rawls. The idea is you design society's roles as if you don't know your future position: rich, poor, advantaged, or disadvantaged. It's meant to push fairness by making you think beyond your personal circumstance. So next time you're weighing a rule, just ask yourself, how would I choose if I didn't know where I'd land?
So, can you elaborate on this lesson and help me understand how this philosopher came up with this thought process?
Absolutely. John Rawls was tackling a big question: what makes a society just? In the 1970s, he proposed the veil of ignorance in his book, A Theory of Justice. He wanted a mental exercise that strips away bias. By imagining you don't know your gender, class, or status, you'd create rules that are fair no matter where you land. It's not about predicting reality, but asking, if I might be anyone, what rules would I trust? It's a tool to build fairness from a place of empathy and rational self interest combined.
Okay, what I want you to do is I want you to pose a hypothetical situation for me, but I don't want it to be related to the barbershop. I just want it to be another life situation where I need to put myself in the shoes of another American. They could be any socioeconomic status, they could be any level of success, they could be any age. But what I want you to do is put me into a position where I really have to think outside of my own shoes so that way we can discuss what my answer is after I've provided it to you.
Imagine you're setting policy for public education, but you don't know if you'll be a wealthy parent, a single parent working two jobs, or a kid in a struggling district. You must decide on school funding. Do you distribute resources equally to every school, or do you allocate more to areas with greater need, even if that means some lose out? Now, from behind that veil, how would you ensure every child has a fair shot, not knowing your own role in the system?
If this situation is based off of tax dollars that are coming from the city, I would imagine that the policy that I would initially go towards would not be the size or the need of the school, but the size of the district. So I would look at the total population of students as well as the total funding being provided, and there would be there would be a dollar amount per student, and I would allocate the dollar amount per student to the individual school districts based off of their individual population. This creates a fair distribution of tax dollars to all of the students within the overall structure, but it also allows the schools to utilize those resources equally for the appropriate amount of population that they have.
That's a thoughtful approach. It's equitable on a per student basis, ensuring each child is valued equally. But here's where I'd push you. What if some districts have far greater challenges, like poverty, language barriers, or fewer local resources? Would a strictly equal distribution still offer every student a real shot? Or might some need a bit more to level the playing field? Just something to chew on.
So in this situation, let's just kind of flesh this out a little bit. Is this all publicly funded schools, or is this also factoring in private education options in those districts?
Let's keep it focused on public schools since they're funded by taxpayer dollars. The question is whether some public school districts might need more per student, like if a school has more kids needing extra support. So would you adjust for that? Maybe giving some districts more to address bigger hurdles? Or would you stand by pure equal distribution per head?
So in this situation, it also sounds like that the poverty rates could impact the amount of things like free school lunches that need to be paid for by the district, because there are going to be more students that'll be utilizing that program than in a wealthier district. Am I understanding this correct?
You've got it. When some districts face higher poverty or unique challenges, they might need extra funding for things like meals, special programs, or support staff. If your goal is genuine opportunity for all, you might consider a baseline per student amount plus a needs-based supplement. That's where the veil pushes us, to think beyond one size fits all and aim for a just shot at success no matter where we'd land.
So in this situation, we may want to factor in what the total cost per student is based off of the individual schools on an average. So if school A is in an impoverished area and school B is in a wealthy area, the cost per child could potentially be more in school A than school B based off of all of the additional resources that are necessary. At that point, you might actually want to look at figuring out what the total cost requirement of the school is, as well as the total funding available, and look at the ratios, the percentages of what's appropriate to send to each school. Because, equity is a great concept, but if there's underlying things that don't allow those kids to actually experience the equity in the way that they need it, they're still falling behind. And if the point of education is to get kids to a point where they can all have an equal chance at graduation and getting into the adult world, the real goal in my eyes would be, I guess we would want to make it so that way all of the kids can get to graduation. That's the bigger emphasis of where priorities should lie.
That's a strong conclusion. By starting behind that veil, you've gone from equal dollars to a deeper equity, where the goal is ensuring all kids reach the same finish line. And that's the power of rethinking social constructs. Sometimes the fairest outcome means unequal resources, because fairness is about giving each person what they need to succeed. You've navigated the veil well.
Why, thank you. I enjoy seeing behind the veil.
You're welcome. And I'm glad you do, because that's where the real insights are. We'll keep lifting that veil anytime you're ready.
Well, it looks like I'm getting a notification that I only have a couple minutes left in this conversation. So I think that here's actually a really good way of wrapping it up, because you actually did introduce a good concept to me. If you wanted to provide any kind of takeaways for the audience, what would you provide for today?
I'd say today's big takeaway is this. When we think about fairness or success, stepping outside our own shoes is key. The veil of ignorance reminds us to ask, would this rule still feel right if I didn't know where I'd end up? Whether it's in business, education, or life, building systems that work for everyone, not just ourselves, leads to stronger outcomes. So next time you face a big choice, ask, would I still pick this if I were on the other side? That's how we shape a better shared future.
And there you go. This is kind of what we're going to be doing moving forward with Easy Education. And I really appreciate the AI actually giving insight and giving me a better opportunity of being able to learn right in front of you guys, because this is what the real goal of Easy Education is for you guys to see that an imperfect person can still be educated on just an imperfect way, but I want you to see exactly how accessible it is. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate a like. It really does help push this out to more people that could get some benefit from it. If you're not already subscribing, you can find this podcast on all your favorite podcasting platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. It's also available on YouTube, and it's hosted later on my website, easytochris.com. But until next time, I really do appreciate you guys tuning in, and have a great day. Be well.